Is Notre Dame going to the Big Ten? There have been rumors around the last 2 weeks. And if you've paid attention to the college football landscape, you've realized that Notre Dame to the Big Ten has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. And it would appear that Notre Dame today, on August 8th, 2022, is as close to joining a conference as they have ever been. And it could be the Big Ten. Over the weekend, there were rumors that Oregon, Washington, and Notre Dame would join the Big Ten. And that would cause a ripple effect across college football that I think we can't even measure before it happens. So, Jake, today, what is your opinion? Is Notre Dame joining the Big Ten?
I think that Notre Dame may not join the Big Ten officially, but what I think is going to happen is the Big Ten is going to find a way to put a package together involving Notre Dame. I think that, obviously, it goes without saying Notre Dame football is a super valuable commodity to have. And I think that, if you can have a situation where, Notre Dame, or there's a Big Ten early game, then you've got Notre Dame, then you've got Ohio State, let's say, playing whoever. I think that's a great setup. I think that for Notre Dame to join a conference, again, it's going to have to check all of Notre Dame's boxes. And by the way, it's going to have to bring Notre Dame more money per year than they make already. So I think that's the challenges. I think if you're looking at Notre Dame to any conference in the big picture, what does Notre Dame want at the core of it? Well, obviously money is the first thing. You're going to want more money in the conference than you make as an independent, right? That would just be the first surface level thing you'd have to have. Number two, I think this whole dynamic around credibility of your conference. Like, obviously the SEC is the best conference we have in college football, but I think the Big Ten is second best, So if you're Notre Dame and the SEC calls you, okay, great, yeah, you're probably doing that. But for the Big Ten, I think that there's more at play there. You got to work out a deal that benefits Notre Dame. So my opinion is I don't think Notre Dame per se joins the Big Ten. But what I do think happens is that they marry up, they work together to create a better, more beneficial package for the conference and for Notre Dame together, because I think that's definitely something that exists and can happen.
See, and if I had to guess, I would tell you that Notre Dame is not going to join the Big Ten. I would agree with that. I think Notre Dame's going to be involved in the Big Ten's TV deal. I think that's what makes sense. And I think a couple other moves are going to happen because of that. I do think Oregon and Washington end up in the Big Ten. I think that happens before this season kicks off. I think West Virginia ends up in the ACC because it just makes too much sense. I don't know how many people saw over the weekend that Pitt and West Virginia sold out their game. They're going to have 70,000 people in a game that features West Virginia and Pitt.
I'm for real.
70,000 people. It makes too much sense. Nobody wants West Virginia and Stillwater. Everybody wants West Virginia in the ACC. It makes too much sense. It makes too much money. So what happens to the ACC? I am very curious to see which teams in the ACC end up in the SEC, because that right there is the deal that I think happens if Notre Dame either joins or affiliates itself with the Big Ten's TV deal. If that happens, I cannot see the SEC sitting tight. Facts. Because too much money will be going out the door to the Big Ten for TV rights. And if they have an average annual value of $100 million in a TV deal, the SEC has to react to that. And does that mean that it is Clemson and Florida State? What about the University of Miami? What happens then? Because right now, the ACC, without question, is a better basketball conference than a football conference. But can you imagine if the ACC's powerhouses, all of a sudden Clemson, Florida State, Miami, join the SEC? That changes the game in college football. And in my opinion, what happens if Oregon and Washington leave the Pac-12 following USC and UCLA, now I think you're cooking with gas if you're the Big 12. And trying to figure out why the Big 12 has not moved yet, which is really surprising. I think it is incredibly surprising that we have not heard, hey, the Pac-12 is picking up San Diego State.
Right.
Hey, the Big 12 is picking up SMU and Washington and Colorado and San Diego State. We have heard nothing. And I think it's because the Big Ten needs to move first. And I think if the Big Ten moves and they affiliate with Notre Dame, and if they add Oregon and Washington, it leaves Pac-12 schools very little choice but to save themselves. And if you're the Utah Utes, Jake, I think if that move happens, you have to join the Big 12.
Yeah, and I think that, again, we've talked all about it the last couple of weeks, that the Utah is going to go one of two ways here. You're going to make a move and you're going to join the Big 12, or you're going to find yourself on an island. We had Bob Thompson on last week. Go find the interview on our channel. Great interview. And Bob's opinion is that the Pac-12 can survive without some of these lifelines coming back, like without UCLA coming back. My question is, can they survive without Oregon, Washington, and Utah, and no USC? I don't know what that looks like. And so I think if you're Utah, you have to be definitive here. You have to be aggressive here. You have to be proactive here and say, hey, look, we see what's coming here. We see the ACC and the SEC commingling and doing their little deal over here, right? We see the Big Ten and Notre Dame, in Washington and Oregon, commingling and putting something together that benefits all of them. What about us? Where do we go? Well, I got news for you. Go to the Big 12. Build that conference. Play the Holy War every year. Make your money. That's the correct move for Utah.
Yeah, and I think the hard part about the Big 12 right now is you're not getting Oregon. You're not getting Washington. You're not getting USC and UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Brett Yorkman and you are looking at what is the right thing to do, and if you are, if you look at what is left, if you are in the Big 12, if you're in the Pac-12 and Brett Yormark calls your phone, hey, it's Brett Yormark, commissioner of the Big 12,
right?
Utah. Today, if he makes that call, why don't you come join us? Utah's going to say, no. Yeah, man. Oh. Hey, it's Brett Yormark. Oregon and Washington went to the Big Ten. Why don't you come and join us? Now you're having a different conversation.
Correct.
And that's why I say I think the Big Ten has to act. And I think everybody's kind of waiting to see what the Big Ten does. And I think Brett Yormark, if he had his way, I think he would love to make a deal already.
Mm-hmm.
I think he would love to have made a deal. But I just think it's very difficult to do that when you don't know who's staying and who's going. Because the other thing that Brett Yormark has to do, he's got to secure his flank. I mean, if they lose Houston, if they lose Cincinnati, if you're the ACC, why wouldn't you go and get Cincinnati?
Yeah.
If you're the Big Ten, why wouldn't you have added Cincinnati? I mean, they have not, to this point, joined the Big 12.
Yeah, and I think there's this dynamic at play between the haves and the have-nots. And I think that is at large in the Pac-12. I look at, again, this situation with Utah and them kind of being on an island here and having to make a choice. I think the other problem is that, it's not like the Big 12 is just going to take Utah. Like the Big 12 would have to get Utah, the Arizona schools, and then maybe Colorado, and then maybe you go after San Diego State, let's say, so because you don't want the Pac-12 or what would be like the Pac-6 at that point, I guess, all jokes aside, to go and add San Diego State. And I think that, if you look at what George Klavkov said at Pac-12 Media Day, he was not shy about saying that the Big 12 was trying to tear them down. And that's what I'd be doing if I was the Big 12. I have to be honest. This is a competition. This is a dog-eat-dog world, man. This is not, hey, let's all be nice to each other and let's work it out. No, this is hey, we need to make revenue per school at the highest possible level. If the Big 10 is getting to $100 million a year, you heard me right, $100 million per school. If that happens, that changes the game. That fuels the SEC's fire to get the ACC thing done. That fuels moves.
But I also think one of the pertinent questions is, how can the Pac-12 survive?
I don't know, bro. If you lose all these four teams, I don't know what that looks like.
I think if you're the Pac-12, I think you can survive if you lose Oregon and Washington, UCLA and USC, but you have to get Boise. I think you have to go and get San Diego State. I think you have to try and poach Houston, because $20 million a year average annual value per school is not viable.
Listen to these teams you're listing off here, right? The Pac-12 is never going to be the same.
No,
I mean,
no,
you know what I mean? And I know survival is different than thriving. That's two totally different things.
Yes.
And we're just talking about them getting by. But think about that outlook for the Pac-12. You're no longer a P5 conference. You're no longer something that nationally needs to be respected. And that's why I say, if you're Utah, you can see the writing on the wall. USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, the 4 big boys, and then you yourself, that have run this conference for the last decade. They're all gone, and you're left sitting here, Utah. What will you do?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of survival, not thriving.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think if you're the Pac-12 and you add Boise State.
Boise State and that blue turf.
If you add Boise State, and they're, with all the money that they announced the other day that they're pouring into their facility.
Which is no surprise, is it?
No, I think it's perfectly timed. And if you are Boise State, I think that's the right thing to do. If you're the Pac-12, go get Boise State.
Yeah.
Go get San Diego State. Go get Houston. Go get SMU. Go put yourself in a position to compete. Put yourself in a position to have a footprint in multiple different regions. That's what the game is now. Mm-hmm. Why is the Big Ten looking so much and so longingly at USC and UCLA? Well, because it's Los Angeles, man. That's a huge TV market. Why do they want the Pacific Northwest? Because that's a huge TV market. Mm-hmm. So if you're the Big Ten, that makes all the sense in the world. To add the global fan base of a Notre Dame, that makes all the sense in the world. But my question is, if you're the Pac-12 and if you're the Big 12, this is the other thing. If you lose West Virginia, that is certainly no death knell to Big 12 football. But if you lose Houston, you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. If you lose, because I don't think BYU is going anywhere. I really don't. But if you lose BYU, you're in real trouble. If you lose Oklahoma State, let's see the SEC. Let's say the SEC comes calling, and they want to add Clemson, Florida State, Miami, but they need a fourth. Well, let's go get Oklahoma State. That makes perfect sense for the SEC, right?
Yep.
Does it make perfect sense for the Cowboys? I don't know. But that's something you got to worry about. So if you're good old Brett, the new commissioner, and you're trying to accomplish all this, how are you not aggressively pursuing new membership in the Big 12? I don't know, but I think it is certainly something where you have to, if you are Brett Yormark, you have got to go and be aggressive in adding new membership. And I think you got to do that now. Yeah. Unfortunately, maybe today's theme is leverage.
I guess.
Unfortunately, if you're Brett Yormark in the Big 12, I don't know that you have a whole lot of leverage until the Big 12 acts.
Oh, and that's what I'm saying.
Or, until the Big 10 acts.
I just think that we're seeing that all across sports. College football, the NBA. You're even seeing it in some cases in Major League Baseball. Like, I just think that there's a lot at play here, and this is what happens in the offseason. Every 7 to 10 years, you get a cycle where you've got realignment, and you've got Kevin Durant being all pissed off at Kyrie Irving and his chakras and his beliefs and his smoke in the building to bless the building. Like, you get this type of thing, and that's what I'm saying. Like, don't be annoyed by it. In some ways, enjoy it, right? Because next season, it's probably just going to be some boring-ass offseason. We're not going to have anything to talk about. So I just think it's a fascinating time, but I will maintain for my Utah people right now, even if you're a Utah fan, don't be naive. BYU has the upper hand. Utah needs to catch up. Utah needs to figure out what the deal is here.
All right, let's get some of your comments in here on college football expansion.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have a lot of comments today. Let's see where we go here. How about Stuart Dearson? I think it would help make another power conference besides the SEC. They make a package like they did with the ACC. I think the ACC has tremendous value around the college football world because I think the ACC is willing to be a basketball conference. And I think they are willing to shrink and be a smaller conference with really good regional rivalries. If you have Pitt, West Virginia, if you have Duke, Carolina, you're good. You're good. They don't need to or want to be the SEC. So I think that's really, really interesting to see where that goes. Brooklyn Rose says Notre Dame shouldn't join. Well, I think they should stay independent as well. I'm a lifelong Notre Dame football fan, and I can tell you there is a lot of attractiveness to joining the Big Ten. I mean, it is.
Well, what do you want, though? Let's be real. What would be the reason you would join the Big Ten? More money, right?
That's it.
Maybe a slightly clearer path to the college football playoff, but I think more money.
You already have that, though.
And that's my point. Like, you don't need the Big Ten to get to the college football playoff.
No,
like,
you
some
don't.
people might make the case that, hey, being in a conference gives you a clear path, obviously. But I don't. But if you're Notre Dame, you already have that path, as we've seen multiple times. And so that's why I say it's not really about the path. It's about money making and deal and setup and exposure for your program. And I think that ultimately is what Notre Dame wants. They want, hey, Big Ten early game, us, and then another Big Ten game, because then you've got relevance, and all of that would be on NBC. That's the setup, and that's what works. It's just a matter of the money, as usual.
Greg Hawkins says, I suffered through 90 minutes of basketball talk for this.
Yeah, you did. You did.
Your suffrage is appreciated. Ken Williams says, I think Utah has got to make a move. You can stay in the Pac-12. What happened with Fox and ESPN? Did they get a deal? They did not.
They did not.
They did not, and it wasn't expected they would either.
And I'm not even trying to pub the channel. Go listen to that Bob Thompson interview. He said a lot in that interview that really brought some clarity to the situation, not just from a football perspective, but like from the inner workings of the TV deal side of this, that will bring some clarity to you on the situation. Scammer Trolling says, of all the scenarios out there, Washington is not going to the Big 12. Yeah, I don't see any way that's a fit. No. I really don't. I think on both sides. CAA Mafia says, good show, fellas. Just a Nick fan checking in, appreciate the convos. You're welcome. Yes, sir. We appreciate you being here. Kay Nuren, good morning. Notre Dame is not going to the Big Ten unless they are paid more than $100 million. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying, man. It's about money. I mean, you're not losing the flexibility of independence unless you're just getting paid an outrageous amount of money. Brooklyn Rose says, makes no sense for Notre Dame to go unless they get over $100 million. Ding. Correct. Exactly right. Correct. Correct. I mean, that's exactly what this is about. Tanner says the Big 12 not making moves is the same mistake the Pac-12 made last summer when OU and Texas left the Big 12. Well, and again, now we know that President Faust at USC killed that. Yeah. Because the USC triumvirate wanted to, I think the group of presidents wanted to expand the Pac-12 last summer and just did not. Yeah. Because USC was like, nah, we're good. He's an assassin. So I think that, to me, that's an issue. Brooklyn Rose says FSU should go to the SEC. I don't think Florida State is at home in the ACC. Yeah. I think they feel like an SEC team. I just don't know what it's going to take to get them back to winning. Like, to get them back to the days. Because it's really hard. I mean, Florida has so much talent, but so many people come to Florida to poach their talent for football. Right. It is remarkably difficult, which is why Utah is such an incredible story. I mean, your best linebacker played at Florida last year. Yeah. At Utah. Like, that's crazy. Like, you look at the pipeline of talent that has come to Salt Lake City from Florida. It's incredible. And that doesn't even include, like, all the other power conferences. The Alabamas, the Notre Dames. It's incredible how much talent comes out of Florida but doesn't stay in Florida. That to me is, I think you're exactly right, Brooklyn. I think they should go to the SEC.